Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday Eve to you, or I guess can't be Monday Eve, but happy Monday evening to you. Um, Always hoping and praying that you had a great weekend, that you're staying warm. It's starting to really get cold out here right now. Thank you all for coming back. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you tonight. Unfortunately, I did have a guest lined up, but they had to cancel and are going to reschedule with me. So had to do a little bit of last minute scrambling to think about what we wanted to talk about tonight, what our conversation can be about. So once again, I'm going to ask that you would help out by calling in. You can always dial in with the phone number here, the 410-513-9499. If you want to talk directly with me, or if you have a comment that you want to be heard as opposed to being read. But of course, I will have Facebook comments are on. You can make comments through Facebook as well. So I invite you to do that. I only had a couple of topics that I was really thinking about. Maybe we can talk about today. We'll see how it goes. Still thinking about our political landscape right now, how things are in America. Thankfully, haven't seen a whole lot of news surrounding racial issues of late, and I'm happy to hear and see that. But that does not mean that suddenly it's been solved and that it's gone away. So we have to always be mindful, and we always have to be diligent about where we're at as a nation. And I was just kind of thinking about some things. And often people will say our election shows how divided we are. When you think about, the election, where 47% on average, or 47% rounded, voted for our current president, Donald Trump. And that represents over what 74 million people. That represents more than 74 million people. And I was really kind of thinking, what does that really mean for us? I mean, yes, that does mean that we are divided, but what are those issues that we are truly divided on? What are those things that the now President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, what is it that they really have to work on and look at? And certainly, I think they are recognizing their diversity and how important their cabinet looks diverse, because that was one of his campaign promises, and he's living up to that aspect thus far. But what does that really look like moving forward? What are the real issues? I mean, certainly there's a racial divide there. There's an equity divide there. When it comes both to race and finance. And I think it was just yesterday we were talking, or I was watching something with my wife, and she was in, I know what it was. It was The Daily Show. And, they was talking about how it's harder for African Americans to get a home now than it was during Jim Crow. I mean, 50 years ago, it's actually gotten harder some kind of way. And that just sounds preposterous. It sounds kind of crazy. How can that be? But that divide it's very real, that financial divide, and that racial divide that is there. So I'm just wondering, that may be my overall thought and question for the night of what does that mean to us? Where do you see the real issues in our country that really says we're divided? I, for one, do not necessarily believe that just because you support Donald Trump, that you are a racist. I don't believe that. I don't believe that everybody that voted for him were doing it because of a black and white issue, and that they think um, for the country to be great, that white supremacy has to rule, and that we can't, or they don't believe that um, it can't be a diverse cabinet. I do believe there's other issues, some of which we know fall along the religious lines and the doctrine that is being taught. So I just wonder what are some of the reasons that you think there's a real divide beyond those things. I mean, those seem to be some of the more um, obvious reasons that have come up in the media, and certainly, I mean, I do believe to some regard there is fake news, and I do believe that the media has a way of hyping things up. But when you peer through all those things and you search a little bit deeper, what do you really think is the reason why we are so divided as a nation? So I'll ask that again because I see it's only a few of us on tonight, and I do appreciate you being on it. And I appreciate if you just say something just to make sure that I know that my comments are working, because usually I would get a comment or two by now, but I haven't gotten any. But I know in the past I have gotten an issue where my comments have not worked. So just let me double check that, and we'll continue on. Um, I see that Regina is on. Hey, cuz, appreciate you being on. I see Tony has gotten on as well. Hey, mom, love you. Glad that you're on as well. And if it's just us, that's fine as well. But just wanted to say that you know when you really think about what's going on in the news, and where our country is right now and what's going on, how do you perceive what do you think needs to be the things that take place right now that's going to help us heal as a nation, that's going to bring us closer together, as opposed to being far to the left or far to the right? Okay. So with all that being said, um, just as we kind of wait a little bit and see if there's others that'll join, or if you have any thoughts about that question. Tomorrow, the 8th. So I know in the news there's been a lot of talk about, uh, how President Trump has, or wanted to do all of these uh, lawsuits, and he's bringing all these suits, and they've all been dismissed. I think up to now, over 30 have been dismissed, or thrown out, or even withdrawn. So he's done over 30 at this point. But did you know that tomorrow is the last day in which the election can really be challenged? It's called the Safe Harbor Day on December 8th. And it's all based on other dates going forward, and they kind of start to count backwards, typically really from that January 20th date. But like the 14th is when they actually the states actually turn in their electoral what's the word I'm looking for? Um, their ballots and their votes and their official voting of the electoral college. There it is. I couldn't think of the word college. So with that being done, now all of a sudden, after the 8th, you shouldn't be hearing a lot of different things as far as lawsuits and things like that, because once that's done, it's done, and it should not be overturned at that point. So we're at that point. Tomorrow would be supposedly his last gambit to get things overturned, overruled, and so on. Not that he's been successful in any one place thus far, because he has not been able to prove in any way or fashion that there has been widespread fraud, not to the point where it would have affected the election results. So you're thinking about that. You're thinking about we're thinking about, excuse me, um, you know, him talking as well about possibly not going to the inauguration. Um, I'm sure you've probably heard that, and that he may even do his own little thing in Florida, where he may announce his 2024 bid for presidency. So there's a lot of things floating out there. Um, but I mean, how are you feeling about that? I mean, to me, it just further says, you know, it's about it's more so about being in power and having a particular look or style as opposed to what's best for the country. Um, I was looking to see, and I didn't see it any place where, a former president didn't give a peaceful transition of power to the incoming president. I didn't see it. Doesn't mean that it hasn't happened in the past, where it wasn't done at least purposely. So I'm just wondering, how do you feel? How does that settle with you? Because to me, it's not a good look for our country when other countries look at us and they're thinking about, we're supposed to be the leaders in democracy and we're supposed to be the light when it comes to democracy. But frankly, it just looks like we're children who are unable to settle some things. Um, Hey Tanya, thanks for joining. Hey Ray, thank you for joining as well. It just makes me wonder, you know, where are we at with this, and how do you feel about that as well? Um, for me, it's just a bad look. Um, and if he does not show up, to me, it's kind of childish. And I guess the days are numbered where we can talk negatively about him. But at the same time, I feel that he will probably continue to be in the news far beyond January 20th. Um, so I mean, I would hope that he would show up. I know his advisors are hoping he shows up. He may show up because again, he may be serious about um, running again in 2024. He would actually be the same age that President-elect Biden is right now. Or will be, because he'll be 78 at that time. So I mean, it's not that far fetched. Uh, but I wonder, how do we feel about that? Do you think, because so many voted for him, do you think that it's possible that he would get reelected? And then the other thing I was thinking about is, you don't really hear a whole lot from the Republicans either. They're not being very vocal about either when it comes to Trump, nor are they being vocal about Biden and what he's been doing. So it's just strange time for me. I mean, I'm older now, and maybe this kind of stuff was happening back when I was a child in the 60s and in the 70s and even 80s. Um, and I just wasn't paying attention. But to me, it just seems to be a strange time. Um, all right. Hey, Tony. Trump stated that he's not attending the inauguration and he is launching his campaign for 2024. I just hope that Biden and Harris a fair chance, because it's going to take more than 4 years. And I agree. It's taken more than 4 years to get to the state that we're in. Certainly, we cannot put it all on Trump, but he definitely didn't help matters get any better. So it's going to take more than 4 years. It's probably going to take more than 8 years for us to start changing the conscience of our nation and start to to heal in the process. So I think it's going to take some time. Um, I will say I am hopeful and prayerful that uh, the Georgia election will help us have a better chance in the House, okay, and in Congress, where it's the next 4 to 8 years, the things that we try to do will not be blocked just because it's not their party and they're just standing against it. I'm really prayerful that going forward, it's that we will start to vote out those who only think about party and not think about the people, regardless of party. I mean, I know people have ideology, and I know that people think about, they have their whatever motivates them or whatever it is that they believe to be right, and that's fine. That's their opinion, and they can fight for that. But I just no longer feel that they do it for the benefit, for what's best for the people. I think they do it more so because of the lobbyists that are involved, for the money that's involved, whatever's going to keep them in power the longest. Um, and I kind of long for the days of when at least I thought, and again, I could be wrong. Maybe this is how it's always been, but I grew up thinking that they were there working for us to make our country better for ourselves, as well as for the countries around us, as well as for the world, really. That we were to be that shining light, and that we were going to help spread democracy as we saw it. But let each country develop their own way of democracy, but show them that this is a good way to represent the people that they should be serving. I just don't feel like they always do that now. Hi, Angela. Thank you for joining. Angela says his season is up, accept it and move on, because you are held, excuse me, at a higher standard, and stop acting immature. And I agree. Excuse me. And to me, that's what it feels like. It feels like immature. It feels like a child that's lost their toy and they don't want to accept it, or someone who just doesn't want to believe or receive that they're not as popular or as beloved as they want to believe. So we'll see how things work out. Hey, Holly, thanks for joining. Appreciate you coming on as well. So among all those things, with the political landscape and things like that, yes, Holly, it's safe for you to be on here. It's always safe. This is a safe place, always. What was I going to say? It's always, amongst all those other things that are going on the political landscape, you still had the issue of, the COVID-19. And now that seems to be the headline every morning. And the numbers are truly alarming. One thing that was said that we probably wouldn't hear anything else about it. Well, obviously, it's something that is very real. I think the last number today that I looked at today was it's over 282 or close to 282,000 deaths. And that seems astronomical, although others don't really think it's that astronomical. Because when you look at the percentage, and I think maybe this is why some people take it so loud or so lightly, is because when you look at the percentage, that 282,000 people, when you look at that number, that's still less than 1% of our total population. If you just look at it as far as numbers is concerned, and I've talked to different people, and that's exactly what they've done. They just kind of look at the number and they're like, well, that's less than 1%. But we can't just reduce the numbers to be just numbers. We're talking about human lives. And that's a lot of families. That's a lot of people who have been affected by this virus, who has lost a loved one, who may not have gotten an opportunity to properly say goodbye, and we've all heard the stories about, saying goodbye on an iPad, not being able to be surrounded by your family and things like that. I mean, we can't just look at the numbers and say it's just numbers. These are lives that are affected. Um, and not just those that have passed, but those that remain, that are going to be grieving and that have to live with the aftermath of a loved one being gone. And not just a loved one. I mean, your coworker, your friend. It goes beyond just that 282 thousand deaths. It reaches many, many, many more. But while I say that, I think because it has not yet reached others, is why we're in such a problem, why it's such an issue, and that why the numbers are going up, not just simply because we're doing more testing, um, but because, people have grown tired of it. One, I think I may have mentioned last week, I may have gone into a store twice, just not purposely, but just forgetting to put on my mask, just because, in the back of my mind, just with all that's been going on, I want to get back to some semblance and I want to live like it used to be. Um, so, we miss how it was, and we try to act as if everything is okay because it's something that we can't readily see. Um, it's almost like you wish there was almost a scarlet letter with this, where, if you have been infected or if you've been around somebody that's been affected, you had to wear some kind of indicator. I wonder if something like that would happen. Now, I know nothing like that we would never do anything like that. But I really do believe, because it's a silent thing, because it's something that we cannot readily see, people just kind of ignore it. Like you said, Tony, people are downplaying it, you know. Um, and sooner or later we're going to have to take it serious. And now I'm even more concerned, um, that with the promise of a vaccine coming, people are just going to get even more lax, you know. And I know last week I asked about, how do you feel about the vaccine, and some of you guys chimed in, and I've talked to other people about, how safe do they feel about taking a vaccine. And most of the people I talk to are saying they're not going to be the first to be in line to take this vaccine. They're going to wait a little bit, months, even maybe even a year or more before they get the vaccine. Which is, I guess I understand that, because there's still so many unknowns. Um, but one thing I will say, and something I am happy to see, was that, three of our former presidents are going to do it live, um, in front of us all, and say, we believe in it, and that they believe it's something that should be done and that it's safe. To me, that's real leadership. Um, Not sure if Trump plans on doing it. He may still feel like he's immune. There's no need for him to do it. Who knows? But people are weary about taking this vaccine. So Holly says, my stepmom is in the hospital currently, non-COVID related. PPE that is put into place there are being used. Very different than what I have seen on Facebook and TV. They were so lax in mask, gloves, and disinfectant. Yeah, well, one will keep your stepmom in prayer. Pray that she recovers from whatever she's recovering from. But we're definitely looking at some things, and how does this really affect us? Hey, Daniel, happy to see that you signed on as well. But if looks like you're gonna say, um, from what I understand is that, at least 70% of the population has to be immunized. Otherwise, not if not enough of us get immunized, it's not going to have a real effect. There's still going to be too many people out there that can be contagious and get the rest of us sick. CNBC said today that if the company requires its employees to take it and employees refuses, companies can fire them. Wow, that's pretty drastic, and I would hope that it wouldn't get to that point, where companies have to mandate it and make it a mandatory thing. And I'm with you, Tony. That's these are amazing times and desperate times, and it's scary that it could get to that point. Um, it really is, you know. So that's just another aspect I was thinking about when it comes to the COVID. And now that I have some of you guys back, what I really opened up with was how do you feel, or again, 47% of the country voted for Donald Trump and his platform, and I guess what he believes, at least some portions of it. How do you think we're going to heal? What's gonna have to take place? And what did they really vote for? What do you really feel like they vote for? And I said it before. I don't believe that everybody that votes for Donald Trump means that automatically they're racist. I just don't believe that. But I believe there are some things that he may stand for um, that they voted for, whether it be for pro-life, whether it be against LGBTQ lifestyles, same-sex marriage. Um, it could be for those reasons that they believe that they should stand with him, and that has nothing to do with race. Um, some of them may have nothing to do with religion. For some, it could be, they just believe they'll become more economically wealthy. Who knows? So I don't believe it's just a race issue. I don't think it's just a black and white thing. Although all along I've said, I believe he's racist, but that doesn't mean that everybody that follows him is racist. So when you look at it and you think about, 47%, and everybody says that we're divided because of those things. Um, why do you think we are truly divided, and what needs to be the big issues that we tackle? And again, I appreciate that President-elect Biden is becoming very diverse in his cabinet. I hope he doesn't do things just to be doing it or to may have a good look. Don't pick people just because they look diverse, but I am hopeful that he's picking the right people because they're qualified to do the job. And that's the big issue for me. All right. Hey, Michelle, glad you joined us. Don't get it twisted. He does stand for anything. He could care less. And, I think there's some things he says out his mouth that he really does care less about. He says some things just to appease some people in the way they think. So I think that's very true. I agree with that. For me personally, just thinking about the man, it's about the money. And you know what? I just thought about this. I don't know why it just popped in my head, but the whole what is it that they're calling? Where he's trying to set up this pre thing. What's it called? My mind just left me. The whole where they won't be able to prosecute, or if they try to prosecute. I can't believe I can't think of the word. Somebody out there know what I'm trying to say. PrePardon. That's what it is. He's trying to do these pre-pardons for his children. That's something else. I'm like, what is that about? I was listening about that last night. Why would you need to pre-pardon something? Is it because to me that says that there's something out there that may be brought up against you or against your children in the future. And if you're so upstanding and Americans and only doing things what's right for your country and for your countrymen, why do you need to be pre-pardoned for anything? That's mind-boggling to me. I don't know. Good question, Tanya. Have we asked or polled people we may know who are Trump supporters? And I think that's very difficult because we found out that Trump supporters aren't vocal. They just support, they won't say anything. their voice is heard in the polls, but they won't hold a conversation with you. Most of them, or many of them, they're not vocal. They kind of secretive about it, you know, especially those who are of color. They rarely speak up and say, you know what, I'm a Trump supporter, and then give a reason why. They just go in and vote, and I mean that's pretty obvious. I think you'd be hard pressed if you talk to a lot of your friends. Um, you know, many of them probably wouldn't even want to engage in a conversation. You probably would even think, or uh, you would probably assume that they did not support Trump until you actually press them about it, and then they may actually say something. And I'm not talking about like just coworkers or friends, but I'm talking about family members. You'd be surprised who would be a Trump supporter in your family. Okay, maybe I would think so. I know a couple of people fooled me. I wouldn't say fooled me, but surprised me that they were Trump supporters. Um, Yeah, and again, that's what I think got him into the office uh, the first time around, and why the polling was so off because people weren't being honest. You know, same thing with this time. The polling was better this time around, I think, but that first time, people weren't being honest about what they thought and who they was gonna uh, vote for, and what they were thinking. And then again, either they weren't being all honest or they weren't reached. And that's why so many times we would hear, there were people out there who just didn't feel like they were being represented. And, they use that opportunity to say, you know what, I'm the forgotten man, but you won't forget me going forward. So I think that's a big issue in our country as well, that we don't always feel free to say what we support, what we believe. Um, I had another thought while I was saying that. Uh, Maybe it'll come back to me. Um, uh, so I'm guessing, Tony, you're saying he knows there's information out there that could hurt him and his family. You know, I know there's been talk in the past about, some of the things that are being held over that President Trump he could not be accused of, or that um, they could not pursue because he is president. But who knows what's going to happen afterwards, you know? And the same thing goes for his family and the positions they held. They may have to end up answering for some things. And I guess they just know that they are going to be approached about some of the things that they've done, because once it's like, a paper trail. You can't get rid of everything. And when the next establishment comes in and they start looking at things, they're going to have questions. And, maybe that's exactly why he's trying to do this stuff, the pre-pardon. It just seems suspicious to me, you know. And I'm not even going to get into the whole conspiracy stuff about people trying to pay or bribe for pardons and things like that. But the pre-pardon thing just seems funny. Again, Tony says there are many more black supporters than we know, even in my family, in which I was surprised. And I think that has happened to a lot of people. I think a lot of people have gotten surprised. And again, it's not because of race. It's not, it's for other reasons, whether it be religion, whether it be financial, maybe just conservative thought versus liberal thought. I just find it surprising, but that's just based on my perception and from how I'm looking at things. All right. So again, what do you believe people really are voting for? That's the big question for tonight. What do you believe people are really voting for when they voted for him? And what do you really believe? What's the big issue that you believe that we as a country have to tackle that's going to help us become closer and less divided? Um, and like I said before, I just don't believe it's all about race, equality. I just don't think that because, like we just said, there are many who are of a minority race or some other race, brown, black, okay, um, who vote for him. So I think we have to take that out of the equation to some degree. It's still very important. Um, it's still a factor, no doubt. Uh, but what are some of those other issues that we think we need to look for and look at? So again, please feel free to call 410-513-9499. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know how you see this unfolding. And maybe it's a good idea too, like Tanya said, ask, or I don't want to say poll, but just start having conversations. Maybe that's where it has to start. Not at the top, but maybe it needs to start with us talking to one another and figuring out what is really dividing us. Why do we disagree? Um, because in the end, the only way you really get to understand somebody is by having communication, by talking. If you don't talk, you don't get an understanding. All right. And something I always say, just because you try to gain understanding does not mean that you have to agree. Okay. You just have a better understanding. And it's something that I've learned because sometimes people feel like that if you take the time to understand somebody's position, you have to automatically agree with that person's position. And that's not true. You're just trying to understand their thinking. Okay. And it causes you to carry on your thinking and it causes you to challenge yourself in your own thinking. And it makes you look at something in a different perspective. Now, when you see it in a different perspective, that doesn't mean that new perspective means that you agree with that person's perspective. You just now have a different way of viewing it. And maybe together you come to a different view together that allows you to walk forward together. And I think ultimately that's what we have to do. Okay. Tony says this. Trump is a businessman and he's a genius as far as developing economically for the country. I question his motives and morals. Okay. I don't know. I kind of fall a little short of wanting to call him a genius, um, a political genius. I don't think so. Um Business genius. I don't know. It's just hard for me to say genius, just because uh, I think he knows how to start something. I think he knows how to grow something, but to maintain it. I mean, throughout his career, things he can build it, but it doesn't last. Um, so for me, um, I don't know if he's forward thinking enough, and maybe that was his issue. Um, he can live in the now. He can analyze the now. He can see what people want now and fix that or attach himself to that and promote that. But to have the long term, yeah. When I stop and think about it just now, he doesn't seem to build anything that lasts. Everything seems to fall sooner or later, and that just shows in all his business practices. Um, I don't know, just something to think about. Um, any other thoughts? Any other thoughts? Still got some time left. Again, feel free 410-513-9499. Um, like I said, after tomorrow, the 8th, we should start hearing about these different things, um, these trials, and him going to court and things like that, because that's the safe harbor day. And once they put in their vote, I believe it's the 14th, the electoral college, officially by the states, then it's a done deal. It's a done deal. So what you know that Ken spoke grammatically correct. Dude can't even talk, read and he reads like a second grader. Um, well, uh, being a genius, I guess you don't have to be strong in every aspect. Um, when it comes to math, reading, and science, none of which he showed that he's great at. But I think that's kind of funny. Uh, but I mean, he knew how to appeal to half the country, nearly half the country. So there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about that. Um, he knew what to say, when to say it, to convince enough, especially the first time around. Um, and I guess enough paid attention even afterwards. I guess enough paid attention even afterwards, and that's why he wasn't able to maintain. And that's again what I'm thinking about. When you listen long enough, when your motives are pure, even though you may put your trust in somebody whose motives may not be pure, you can look and you can start to say, you know what, this is not what I want to be attached to. And I think enough people who may have initially voted for him saw that. What he was promoting was hollow. It was empty, and they were just words, and that was enough for them to say, you know what, I'm not going to attach myself to this any further or any longer. So um, again, maybe a genius at being able to start and build something. Um, it's kind of making me think about a personality type. One of the personality types I talk about in one of my leadership classes, um, where he likes the attention. He has probably a lot of ideas. I won't even say great ideas, but he has a lot of ideas, things that pop into his head. Some things stick, other things don't. And I look back at some of the things he may have suggested, some of the most ridiculous things that he's suggested. And that's just because when an idea popped in his head and it sounded exciting and new, he would just throw it out there. But then there is other things that he may have said, and he does know his finance. I'm never going to say he didn't do anything for the country. He did some smart moves when it came to finance and things like that. But in the end, you have to worry about how long will it last? How long will it stick? Yeah. Then just looking back over his entire career, he starts well, he can build something, but it crumbles and it doesn't last. How many times has he bankrupted? How many times has he started businesses and they're up and running for a year or two and then they're gone? He doesn't have that, like you said, Tony, longevity. He doesn't have that stick to itness. Um, he doesn't build things that have strong foundations. But I didn't do this tonight to talk about just Donald Trump, but really, where do we go from here? What do you see as the biggest challenges for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris? What do you see as the real issues? Because I think we have to go beyond those things that we see out in front. There's more to it, in my opinion. All right. So again, 410-513-9499. Be happy to hear from you. I had another thought, and something else that crossed my mind, that really made me feel good. And this is just a preference. This isn't to say that how he speaks is completely wrong for everybody. But for me to hear presidential talk, to hear kind of going back to how what Michelle was saying, his grammar and things like that, but to hear um, how our leaders that are coming in, how they are speaking, and it sounds presidential. And again, it's not just that they're saying words, but you feel that there's some substance behind it. One thing I'm going to share with you as an example. Um, and I was thinking about this earlier because I was thinking about the whole inauguration thing. And typically, what happens is the outgoing president, they'll have a couple of meetings with the incoming president, and um, don't know if that's going to happen. Not sure if that's going to happen. Not sure if he's going to do that or not. President Trump, he still hasn't conceded. More than likely, probably won't ever concede. In fact, they're saying that he may. There's a possibility. Some of his aides are saying from the White House, there's a possibility, or they're wondering that when he goes home in Florida for the holiday over the Christmas and New Year holiday, may decide not to come back to the White House. Okay. And that's a really real thing to think about, just because he doesn't want to do the inauguration. And he doesn't want to concede. He doesn't want to face it, but typically what happens is they'll have a couple meetings. But one of the last things that a president will write a letter to the incoming president. And they shared. I think I was on CNN at the time. They shared something that President Obama, his letter, a portion of it anyway, that he left for President Trump. Okay. And it's funny how what he says, at least this portion that we have in here, how this relates to and how we feel about and think about the presidency. And here's what it says. It says, this is what he wrote to President Trump, President Obama. He says, "We are just temporary occupants of this office." And I could just stop right there. And it just makes you wonder, does he really think, President Trump, did he really think he would be there for a lifetime? Did he really understand that this was just a temporary thing? We are just a temporary occupants of this office that makes us guardians of those democratic institutions and traditions, like rule of law, separation of powers, equal protection, and civil liberties that our forebears tonight, or that our forebears fought and bled for. Okay, this is what Obama is writing. Regardless of the push and pull of daily politics, he went on, it's up to us to leave those instruments of our democracy at least as strong as we found them. And when I read that, I'm like, wow. When I look at that, and he is saying to the one that's going to succeed him. And I remember hearing him say that he was hopeful. He was hopeful that as a newcomer to politics per se, as an outsider, that Obama, that Trump would understand the gravity of what was going to take place during his term. And he was hopeful. And since I've heard him since, and he says, you can see and you can tell that he was not ready. He didn't understand. But when you think about, what we're going through, that last little bit, that last line, where he talks about regardless of the push and pull of daily politics, it's up to us to leave the instruments of our democracy at least as strong as we found them. And to me, that says is more the office itself is more important than the man who's in the office, or in this case, as we are fastly approaching, the person that's in the office. You know, the whole thought of talking about how our politics, how our democracy, how how we vote is corrupt. To tear those things down, it stands in direct disagreement with what President Obama was saying. And even in this letter, you can see that he was just trying to inspire, and that's something I feel like we've been missing. I can't think of over the past 4 years. I can't think of something that he said, and maybe that's because of my own bias. I don't know, but I can't think of anything that President Trump said that I found to be inspiring. That sounded, and I think that's something, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, and you can disagree, because there's been presidents, hey, there's been a lot of people that didn't speak well, but they understood the mission. But it's my opinion that my leader has to have an aspect of inspiration to him where he can speak and he can inspire me and move me, and others to move in one direction. And again, maybe that was just my bias, or maybe that's why I couldn't see it, or maybe that's why I couldn't hear it. But honestly, I can't think of a single time over the past 4 years where I felt like he inspired me or said something that could inspire an entire country for the right reasons. I just can't think of it. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But I think you have to be able to inspire people, to move people. And hopefully, President-elect Joe Biden will be able to do that. He'll be able to move a country, even if it's just one step closer towards each other, these polarizing areas. And you can just get them just a little closer. That'd be great. If he can just start that walk back where we're closer and we start to see ourselves as one country. Okay. That doesn't mean that we're ever going to, again, agree with everything that the other side sees, but it shouldn't be, this is my America and that's your America. The phrase of your president, versus my president. I'm hopeful that, those type of things will go away. It should always be our president. And honestly, the only time for myself, the only time I felt like it was our president was when President Trump was being admitted to the hospital. And I felt like, that's our president and we should be prayerful for him. We should be thinking about his well-being and his family's well-being, because that says something about us as a country. I don't know. Just my thoughts, how I feel about it. So again, I'm just hoping that Biden will be inspirational to some degree, that Harris will be inspirational to some degree, that we begin to heal as a country. And I keep saying it. Maybe it's just because of my age. I've been around long enough. To me, I've seen our country degrade over the past few decades. But I'm really hopeful that we can get back to the ideals or ideology that we had when I was growing up. Not that it was perfect or great, but again, I still believe that we can be the great country that was foreseen over 200 years ago. I just believe that the dream could come true. And maybe I'm foolish, but I don't know. Guess that's just because of the family I grew up in and, the things that I was taught to believe about our country. And I still believe we're in the greatest country on this planet. with the best opportunity to change for the better. So um, that's it for me. I'm not going to prolong it. I do appreciate you guys again being on with me this week. Prayerfully, my guest will definitely be able to join us next week. That's why I don't like to say too much. I don't try to promote too heavily because I know things happen, life happens. Um, but we'll be back next Monday. We'll have hopefully a guest that we can talk about a few things. I got 2 or 3 other people that I've spoken to as well. So hopefully we'll be able to finish out this year strong with a couple of guests and start the new year strong as well. I'm planning on some new things for the new year that may help the show feel and look a little different going forward. As always, I appreciate you guys, especially you guys, my core group, um, who are always here. Appreciate it. I love you and appreciate you. Please continue to talk up the show. As we get back on track. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate your prayers. Praying for you and your families as well. Um, thank y'all again. Uh, Always feel free to make sure to send me uh, some messages, instant messages, or whatever. If you have some thoughts about topics, I would love to hear from you about, who would you like to have on here to have a conversation? You know, who do you find to be interesting? Who would you like to learn more about? That somebody that may be in your circle, um, somebody else that maybe you've listened to. I don't mind going out and asking people to join me for an hour if they don't mind doing it. Let them know I can't pay them right now, but who knows what will happen in the future. So, just ask me. I mean, send me ideas and thoughts because I say it every week. This is not supposed to be a lecture from me to you, but a conversation between us. So the only way that's happening or it will happen is if there's many voices having a conversation because conversation is between 2 people sharing ideas and thoughts. And I don't want to just share my thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts and your ideas as well. So please share with others, make comments, you know, send me information about others that you might want to talk to or hear from, ideas, questions. If you have a question during the week, you're like, you know what? I wonder what this is about. And it doesn't have to be about religion, doesn't have to be about politics, whatever. Everyday life conversations is what we're looking to do. So know that I love you. Thank you again. As always, I love you, but God loves you more. And he did give us his son so that we could have everlasting life to be with the Father. If you have any questions regarding that, please feel free to send me a message and I'll be happy to talk to you about that as well. So do be safe, stay warm, stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands. Don't go out into public places unless you really have to. Keep yourself and others safe. I love you, Mom. Talk to you soon. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Talk to you tomorrow because I know you're getting your rest. But look forward to seeing you guys next Monday, 7 o'clock. Be safe.